Hello and welcome to Word Haven. We are here with Daniel Cantor. Let's see if I get this right. Actor, director, writer, and educator.
That's right.
You're welcome to elaborate on any of those, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, it's up to, it depends what you're curious about.
I guess we'll go for the narrative structure because we are talking about narrative. So maybe
Right.
you want to paint us it that way.
Paint, what do you mean? Paint my life that way?
Yeah, why don't you paint your life?
Oh, Lord in heaven, that's too hard, kid.
Well, if it helps, I do want to offer a tarot reading to any of my guests, and I love that I throw that at them because I have no idea who thinks it's the devil's work.
Well, for me, things like tarot are like, my official position is I don't believe it, but then I actually do believe it.
Yeah. Well,
And
I love it's.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love this for the topic of narrative because this is the thing I love about horror movies is they come up with the most ridiculous premise, like there's a VHS tape that kills you,
Right.
and then the person who doesn't believe it just seems like such a jerk.
Right.
So I'm wondering, how did those spring off of each other for you? That's my narrative question. Did you start out as an actor? Did you start out wanting to direct?
Yeah. I wanted to be an actor since I was a little kid, like at 6 years old. I remember thinking I want to be an actor, watching a TV show, being like, I want to do that. It was just utterly organic to me. And then, by the time you're a teenager or whatever, your interest diversifies a little bit. In high school, I directed some and started to write a little bit. But really predominantly I've been an actor and mostly professionally. And I always really wanted to direct. And then I started teaching. He's here. Oh, he's live. He's in
here. Well, he's sneaking through the back.
Wow.
Right now. This is the actor who we thought would never come. We thought we were dealing with like a Godelian element.
Right.
I got homemade coffee ice cream.
Okay, I got you a coffee. I got you water, Daniel. I brought you nothing.
That's coffee ice cream?
Yeah, as a friend Nicole, she makes amazing ice cream. And
wow, nice.
Hey, look
This
at
is
you.
Bobak Bakhtiari.
I
might
wish
have actually pronounced his name correctly.
No, but it'll happen one day. You look great. Oh, is this
You're live.
the Broadway actor Daniel Cantor?
This is the Broadway actor, educator,
Oh my God.
writer, and director.
Where are we live?
We'll figure that out later.
Oh, all right.
Daniel was expressing his inborn love of acting, and then everything else sprung from that.
So like,
Yeah, I think so. It was my primary and first interest, and it's been the predominant thing that I've done, certainly professionally. But I've always also loved teaching. And in fact, in high school, we had an early childhood lab program, and it was you like took education theory and practice for one period, and then you actually taught in a lab preschool the other period. And I was like one of the only guys in the, it was all women and me in this early childhood program. But I always really wanted to teach. And I've actually taught preschool to graduate students over the course of my life. But I think when I started teaching acting at the university level, that was a natural bridge sort of to directing as well. And then I started to direct more, and I started my own theater company. And I've intermittently written in there too. I've written a couple of screenplays and a couple of plays, and I just wrote a rock and roll adaptation of Medea, Euripides' Medea, which performed at Joe's Pub in March, and they've invited us back. So I think between directing, writing, being an educator, acting, this might sound pat, but I think for most actors, as you get older, you realize you want more responsibility or more agency in the space. And so I think a lot of smart actors wind up turning to one or many of those things: writing, directing, producing, teaching. And I've done all of them. So for me, at my age now, what I'm most interested in is opportunities to practice creativity.
At his age of 38.
Yes, at my age of 38, practice creativity, to explore the craft of storytelling in one form or another. And as highfalutin as it sounds, to investigate what it means to be a human being through art.
Oh, we're doing that.
Any way that I can do that, I'm happy. It doesn't have to be as an actor anymore. And I think when I was younger, it's a more sort of egoistic orientation. to want to be the actor only because the actor is the one who's like scores the goal, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So now I don't care as much about scoring the goal anymore.
So was Medea then the idea of I'm going to branch out at another discipline, which is the music element?
I think so, maybe. I mean, I'm a huge music lover, but I don't play an instrument, and I don't really read music. And even though my mom is a musician, but I love music and I think musically, and every play I direct, I incorporate live music into the play, even if it doesn't already exist in the piece. It's like I do that with every show I direct. So I had the idea I've been wanting to do like a rock and roll Greek play for a long time. And then I went down to PJ Harvey. I don't know if you know her, the rock and roll.
Oh yeah.
I went down a PJ Harvey YouTube wormhole a few years ago and wound up seeing her make an appearance on The Tonight Show when Jay Leno was the host, singing her song Rid of Me, just her and a guitar.
Uh-huh.
And as I watch it, I'm like, that's Medea. That is Medea.
Okay.
She's like the muse for the whole piece.
Yeah. There's something to be said. It's something I aspire to as a musician, that just hold the crowd with just that one instrument.
Right.
And so the parallel to Greek theater is interesting because Greek theater started with two characters, right?
Well, it actually started with a chorus and a choral leader, and there was a call and response. So the first dialogue was a single person and a chorus. And then Aeschylus or somebody was like, hey, let's get two people talking and the chorus.
Yeah.
And then
dialogue.
Euripides got really frisky and he's like, what, three?
Yeah. So before that, you had the one person, the chorus behind. And so we have that name dialogue coming specifically from two people. So the introduction of someone like Bobak in the middle of a performance to make a third was actually a radical notion.
Radical.
We've had the privilege of having you sing in a performance as well.
Did I sing?
Yeah, I think. Did I sing? Or are you talking?
I think I made both of you sing.
I mean, I did some rapping, maybe.
Yeah, we've all worked on a piece called Tyrannosaurus that Bobak and I co-wrote. And
that's a little bit of a stretch, but
did we not co-write it?
I was.
One of us has a contract somewhere, I promise.
As I wrote it, you polished it.
I polished it. Wow. Okay. Well, the line we're discussing would be that you got stuck with Young Thug. You got stuck doing various accents.
Right.
Yeah. And singing in all of them.
I think Kid elevated it into a more prominent chaos wizardry. It's actually Center Theater Group. I probably shouldn't be saying this if it's live, but they're kind of interested. Kirk Douglas is looking at it now. Anyhow,
that's great.
Did we talk about Daniel on Broadway yet?
No.
What?
No.
He's on Broadway right now.
He buried the lead.
Daniel Cantor, head of theater at the University of Michigan. I don't know your official title, but that's irrelevant. You're kind of an important guy there. On Broadway in Tom Stoppard's new play. What was it called?
Leopoldstadt.
Wait, come again?
Leopoldstadt.
Oh, nice. So it's Jamaican.
Yes, it's about Jamaican Jews.
About Rosh Hashanah in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Are you working with Tom Stoppard on this directly? Have you met the man?
I have. I've worked with him directly. Yes.
What was that like?
Pretty wonderful. I mean, first of all, the play is like a masterpiece, and just won the Tony for best play. And
Tom Stoppard is, I think the official title would be a legend, if you're listening and you don't know the theater world.
Yes. He's very gracious man and kind, soft-spoken, a little bit reserved. I mean, my normal function in the play is I play a couple of small parts and then I understudy some of the big parts.
Okay.
In a day-to-day way, maybe I wasn't at the center of his focus. I didn't want to impose myself on him, but I had some lovely interactions with him. And he came to the last week in the rehearsal room and all through tech and previews. And then he's come back a couple times. And of course, he came back for the Tony Awards. And actually, I have a picture. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, of me and him holding his Tony.
Oh, wow.
I know. Look, he's 86. My dressing room was on the 4th floor, and like a Broadway house, like the dressing rooms just stacked up like this on either side of the theater, and it's literally like 8 steps that are all of it. And we're in previews, and I'm like in my dressing room, and I see somebody in my periphery in the doorway, and it's him. He's like, I just want to tell you, spot on with everything you're doing. Thank you so much, so appreciate it. He had walked to every dressing room. Well, 86.
Sweet.
Wow.
He's great. He's so smart, and he's so smart and curious. And I don't know. I think he's arguably one of the greatest playwrights who ever lived. So it was certainly feels like a real honor to be able to worked in his periphery.
Yeah.
But you went on quite a bit in like major roles in that show, right?
I did. Yeah, I did. I went on a good amount, 3-4 weeks worth of playing big roles.
Wow. And that it's been a year run, right?
Yeah, 10 months.
10 months, and you're coming back to teach in about 2 months.
Yeah, and very end of August.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
So what are some of the highlights, awkward moments, unusual moments in this run?
Awkward moments, oh my God. Well, there were a few times we had to stop the show. When you're run long enough, shit goes wrong sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, like mid-show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
someone have a seizure.
At least 4 times we had to stop the show.
Wow. Well, you're understudy, so you're knowing the play kind of inside out, knowing all these different roles and knowing it kind of from all these angles.
Yes.
And then you're brought in when someone cancels, so it's already a day that's a little bit on fire.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I'm also in the play always playing.
Yeah.
So I'm performing every day, no matter what.
Well, yeah.
I don't know which role I'm going to perform. And often there's some planned outs, like their vacations and personal days and sick days that you can take beforehand. But often it was at the last second, like an hour and a half before I would find out. But
so Daniel Cantor really single-handedly holds Broadway together.
Really do.
And he's a myelin sheath. That's what's that?
I just had a totally random thought.
Nothing. Yeah. Go
that's the way to go.
2 nights ago, there's a thing on the call board saying there's some VIPs in the house, and there might be a photo opportunity after. And everyone's like, what? Who is it? And then so when the show was done, like, go down to the house if you want to meet the VIPs. Go down to the house, and it's Bill and Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Oh wow, they're still alive?
What's that?
They're still alive.
Still alive. The Clintons are still alive.
Hey, it's amazing.
And then there was the big photos of the group, and then people sort of broke off, and somehow I wound up in a small circle of about 4 people and Bill Clinton.
Oh God.
I'm right next to Bill Clinton and having an extended conversation with him. And he told some good stories.
Some good stories? That's all we're getting?
Wow.
Well,
first of all, I feel like we're lacking a lot of details here. Let's back up 1 sec. There was the 4 times the show got interrupted. I just want to know maybe 1 or 2 of them, what precisely happened.
Okay, so there are 5 acts in this play. Each act takes place in a different year. And the basically plays about 4 generations of a Viennese Jewish family from 1899 to 1955. So there's 1899, 1900, 1924, 1938, 1955. And between the acts, a scrim comes down, and there's these projections. It's almost like some movie slideshow that happens that sort of depicts the passage of time and does it in a way that kind of highlights the themes of the play. They're really incredible. So the scrim comes down, and one day, and people are waiting to enter, like in the wings. And one day the scrim has like a big metal bar. It's a big Broadway stage, very wide. And it got caught on a light and then went and just went bam and just slammed down to the floor. They're like, please hold the show. And
wow.
There were kids in the play, and the kids started to cry.
I don't know, sorry.
Horrified. And then they were, And then they fixed it, but nobody knew no one told us what the problem was.
Did you hear someone yell at the lighting designer at some point?
No. And I can sing Half Your Face. There was a big to-do after actors being upset that they didn't understand what was happening, if they didn't know if they were safe, blah, blah, blah. One time, there's a fire in the wings. We had to stop for that. There was fire in the wings.
Like a big fire, tiny fire?
No, fire. So there's a Christmas tree in one of the scenes, and there are Christmas lights, and there's a battery pack that charges the lights, and the battery pack like exploded.
Wow.
It burst into flames.
Everything you're talking about is why I like writing screenplays. Because live performance is terrifying to me. And I do it a fair bit. I do it a lot with music.
Yeah.
And I've been privileged to do it with all of you. But it takes that sort of show must go on mentality to just get out there with whatever the props department hands you that resembles the thing they were supposed to hand you.
I mean, sometimes though, I'm sure Daniel has done a considerable amount of TV and theater. There are disasters that are creative opportunities to continue. I remember once I was in a show called Jesus in India. We had a big camel that was essentially a motorcycle that was dressed up as a camel, and Jesus comes riding through, and I played the St. Paul-like disciple. And one night, the camel's neck broke. So when it came out, it was just really wonky and it looked really weird. So we improvised the whole scene, and later, got a lot of laughs. We got a little bit of, yelled at a bit by the stage manager. But there are those situations, and I want to hear, since you've had more regional and Broadway experience, Daniel, some of the highlights where there's a disaster and you took it as an opportunity to pursue your comedic glory.
Oh no, I'm paralyzed.
Well, I feel like we've witnessed that, because as we worked on this play that Bobak and I actually co-wrote. Sure. A lot of what we got out of it. So I love this idea of comedy punch up, where you get the script and you kind of know where the script is going, but the direction you want to take the rewrite in, which is to punch up the humor, and being in a room with actors, playing things up and just getting more and more absurd was something that really added to the piece. So, having this stretch of actually drafting that script with you and some of your actors from your theater group was continuously throwing you in those odd situations and seeing how you juggled things.
Well, I can bring this back, kid, to our preamble conversation about Eastern thought.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Is that I think the joy of collaboration and the joy of live performance, I suppose any art really, but it's particularly important in live performance, which is a dialectical relationship, right? To things that seem to be antithetical, actually mutually defining each other and arising mutually, right? So the sort of yin-yang theory. So that structure and spontaneity need one another. They lean on one another. They define one another. And you need the proper balance of structure and proper dialectical balance between structure and spontaneity for something to feel artful.
Yes. And even in film, you're still getting that same element, because it is so often the unrehearsed or the unpredictable that is powering it. You just have a different ability to go in and edit, and so you miss some of the revelatory aspect that can be there with the live performance,
right?
Which I've definitely seen, because sometimes it's a huge thing that goes differently. Sometimes it's just an actor with a slightly different vibe that night going onto the set and bringing this other element.
Right. That's right. I mean, there should always be an element of spontaneity, even when you're doing the show, eight shows a week, and that that spontaneity manifests itself in very, very subtle ways most of the time, but that's okay. That's what gives its life. And the thing about things going wrong is that sometimes as an actor, when you're in live performance, many shows a week, it can get rote. And when it gets rote, it might still look pretty good, but it's losing its vitality. it's losing its vital essence. And so when something goes wrong, you're forced into spontaneity, and suddenly actually everyone's in the moment again.
Yeah. So Daniel Cantor and I were discussing the actor, the writer, Daniel Cantor,
The producer,
the educator.
the contact improv.
We were talking about the number 108, and which we both have no clue what it really means.
Just I know it's important in Buddhism.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm watching White Lotus season 2, and I'm like, of course, somebody said this has to be in room 108.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know?
That totally went over my head.
Yeah. I'm just seeing it there, and I'm like, somebody knows, and then I want to say what they know, but I still have no idea what that number means.
We can look it up right now.
We can.
Anybody want to do that?
You're on my phone right now, so I can't.
Okay, I can answer questions.
I can look it up, Daniel. I mean, you're the VIP here.
I need these glasses. Okay, you're gonna what's the relevance of 108 in Buddhism? Number 108 in Buddhism.
But and then I wonder where you trace the origins, because there's 108 names for Ganesh, and there's 108 names for Saraswati, the goddess of everything we're talking about now, culture and beauty and art. Right. But then, which is the origin point?
Apparently, it's got importance in Hinduism and in the Bible. 108 is according to Vedic cosmology. We don't want that, right?
No, that's good. That sounds good.
Okay, great. 108 is the basis of creation, represents the universe and all our existence.
Yeah, but I thought that was 42, so now I'm all confused.
Okay, let's see.
You're mixing your sources.
Okay.
In Tibetan Buddhism, sorry,
yeah, that's good.
The number 108 mainly stands for the Kangyur, the Tibetan Buddhist canon, a loosely defined collection of 108 volumes of sacred texts. Not as exciting.
See, it's got to have like some cosmic origin before it turns into a bunch of texts.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm assuming.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
This is in Hinduism. It is said that the number 108 represents the distance between our body and the God within us.
It's 108 units?
Yeah, 108 units.
Of what?
But now get this. In the Quran, it says there's a saying you are closer to God than your jugular vein.
That's so cool.
Which is quite, I don't know, I thought of that because I'm thinking about the distance between us and God, and that reminds me, of my grandma sharing that.
Well, let's talk about your grandmother, because it shows up in the play that I wrote and you polished. And our play was mainly
Daniel wrote it, we polished it.
By Sufism, and you're talking about you were bringing in the yin yang quality, how things are in dialogue, I think, right? Which is what we're talking about. Dialogue.
I'm sorry, I gotta put this ice cream in the freezer. It's gonna melt. It's kind of hot here. I'll be right back.
It's extremely hot in here, and I'm wearing a dinner jacket just to torture myself through this.
Yeah.
So there's some element of drama.
It's like a Finnish sauna in here. We need some birch wood to slap the shit out of each other.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have this interest in Eastern thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that I do as well. And then I was completely taken into a new direction when Bobak thrust us into this play. Please don't slit your wrist in that direction during this
that
interview.
would be a real surprising turn in the podcast.
Well, I think he's again one-upping me, because I'm like, I'm going to wear a hot jacket in a hot room for an interview. So he pulls out a straight blade.
Wow.
Fucking the menu in here.
It was for benign reasons. I'm carrying this.
You can't kill yourself. You're a father now.
Wait, I'm taxing you to talk about your grandmother.
My grandma or Daniel's grandmother?
You talk about your grandmother in the play.
I don't even remember that. What part?
I'm trying to transition into a discussion of the secret Islamic thoughts.
Big thoughts?
Big thoughts.
Islamic thoughts.
Islamic thoughts.
That makes me hungry for some reason.
That'd be great if with your Happy Meal you got Mick thoughts.
Would you like a Mick thought with that?
I think the Happy Meal is a Mick thought.
And it's like a Quranic reference.
Exactly.
We have a few Mick thoughts for you today. The distance between your body and God.
Yes.
Well, I was trying to see if it was possible to get you all to talk about the relationship between Sufism and Buddhism.
I didn't know this party was about that.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing if I can take us there.
Well, that's I see to Bobak there because I don't know a lot about Sufism.
So the play that we're talking about right now is one about a Sufi diamond thief. And it has a lot to do with the place of materialism in our culture and the distortions that would have to happen for another culture to come to America and experience the pressure of the melting pot that is life in America and how that affects one's cultural life.
What does that say? No, okay. Oh, we'll work for treats. Okay.
Yeah, which is, I think, the American idea, right? That you will work for treats, which I'm for. You know, we can discuss economics, but I'm for that. I'm okay with that. But the problem is that I think that it tries to usurp everything, even spiritual ideals. So that's something that's explored in the play.
Right.
So we're talking about dialogue. That's another issue here, which is what is the dialogue between the spiritual realm and the materialist realm, if you believe that they're distinct.
Well, that's the question, because one might say that if we're going back to the sort of dialectical in the Hegelian sense, dialectical thinking.
I was waiting for it.
That then they're not distinct because you cannot have one without the other.
Yeah. And
so they define one another. They are mutually dependent to arise and exist and for us to perceive them.
Yeah. And there's a term for this in Chinese Buddhism: mutually interpenetrating and non-obstructing.
No, say it again. What?
Mutually interpenetrating and non-obstructing.
I love that. That's incredible. That's what I'm trying to say.
But that's easy in the ideal, but in this play that we're talking about, Tyrannosaurus, it's you own the house and you own the property, and the spiritualist breaks in and says, I want it. And then that's where the rubber meets the road, because it's really easy to say these things in theory, that all is one and everything is interdependent.
Right.
When somebody's like, hey, give me that, it's more difficult.
Right. Well, I'd say that's another sort of dialectic.
Yeah.
Which is, we are in part of a divine consciousness, being human, and we are animals.
Yeah.
We're animals. Gimme.
Fucking animals.
Want, need. I mean, they're both true.
Yeah.
Both in constant tension. Although maybe they're not in tension. Sometimes they're not in tension, actually. I mean, there's a weird, I'm going on a tangent. Sorry, it's not necessarily about Tyrannosaurus, which I do want to talk about in a second.
Wait.
What? Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but were there any kind of animalistic fantasies that Bill Clinton shared or anything?
He did make an animal reference.
Boom! I knew there was something there.
Yeah, that seems really germane.
All right, let's get back to Bill Clinton.
Well, he was talking about some world famous entomologist, right? That's an insect person. Entomologist, is that right? No.
No.
What am I doing?
I'm just gonna play it. I'm
mixing my words. A guy who studies
Mexican words. Oh my God, we lost his audio.
Do you have my audio?
You're back. Okay.
Anyhow, Clinton said that this guy wrote a book saying the species that live the longest are ants, termites, bees, and human beings. And he said he's not counting the dinosaurs. A meteor came and after post dinosaurs, ants, termites, bees, and human beings, because they all cooperate. They all have the capacity to cooperate.
Okay.
So Bill was like, I'm hopeful then, as we face all these crises, reemergence of ethno-bigotry and nationalism and environmental crises, whatever. He feels like human being, maybe our capacity to cooperate with one another will allow us to survive.
Okay. So I want to talk more about this the main theme that we keep coming back to, which is what is dialogue. So one of my heroes is the filmmaker Eric Romer, French New Wave filmmaker and novelist, actually. But it's interesting because he is not so much interested in ideas, even though all his pieces are on ideas, but he's more interested in the dialogue between two people. So, you know, I can be parodies as representing the serious Buddhist inquiry. Bobak can be parodied as being the Sufi silly man, you know, but instead of us purely just representing Buddhism and Sufism, it's just Kid and Bobak. So I think this is very interesting because I'm often tempted to throw all my ideology into a piece. But it doesn't seem to hold well because it just becomes an ideological essay posing itself as a piece of drama, where my real job is to respect the characters. Go on.
Well, I will say, and this trying to weave together with all the things we're talking about today, is Stoppard says, while he was here for rehearsal, he was interviewed at the 92nd Street line. I went to the interview, and he said, what motivates him to write, what he's most interested in are ideas. That's what he's most interested in. And it's clear, I mean, his plays are very cerebral and they're embedded with intellectualism, and you have to have understanding of history to appreciate the plays, whatever. But that's what he's primarily interested in. But I think great plays, and Stoppard is like this, and George Bernard Shaw is like this, that great plays do create true dialectical, now dialectical in the other sense of a back and forth dialogue, dialectical relationships between characters representing ideas. And in that sense, they're non-ideological. They're about the exploration of problems, conundrums, contradictions, paradoxes, mysteries in the human experience, rather than this person is right and this person is wrong, and I'm going to advance that as the playwright so I can advance an ideology. That, what I just described as propaganda, the former is art, exploration of ideas.
So we've decided to, it was Daniel's idea, just Daniel Cantor's idea, to start before my co-write Bobak showed up, because he thought it would add this interesting absurdist element. Right. So when I was talking about, we were talking about Godot, and Beckett had said that if he knew what Godot was, he wouldn't have written the play. Right. So there has to be this element that the writer is more interested in questions than in answers. I think.
Without question. Has to be. That's what I really feel that way. You know, it's funny, like sometimes I'm a political person, I'm a political activist, you know, whatever, but it's a little bit like, you know, to me, art goes a layer deeper than the politics of the day about the human experience. And there's a mystery to our experience, or there's enormous pain and yearning and wonder and awe and curiosity and ecstasy that is beyond definition. And the only way to get close to defining it is through art. Is through the side door. We can tickle the awe of the human experience. We can organize it slightly. And the politics of the day is a layer more superficial than that in an odd way. And I find it very perplexing when a lot of people say, well, I'm in art to change people's minds, implying that I know the answer. People out there don't know the answer, and I'm going to give them the answer. That is putting you in a position of superiority to your audience. That is, it's a deeply arrogant thing to say that.
Yeah. And I have all those temptations. But as I write, or not as I write, as I edit. When I edit, I go back and I go, wow, you're really insufferable for the next 3 pages, you know? And the theater world was blessed by the existence of Bertolt Brecht. Am I saying his name anywhere near closely? Yeah. Because he'd experienced a lot of propaganda. And I know his line that if sharks had art, their art would just be like fish being gouged on teeth. You know, and it's how can you find something that allows your audience more grace and more freedom of thought than that? Because I think we all want to change the world, and it's really hard to see difficulties in the world and not want to mobilize in action.
It's true. I mean, and to be all honest, I don't know the answer, and I think there are always exceptions, and nothing is absolute. I'm going to sound like I'm being absolutist, but I absolutely don't feel this absolute.
You haven't sounded.
What I'm about to say, which is that, to me, my experience of being someone who receives art, all the music I listen to, visual art, movies, TV, plays, theater I go to, and the art that I create, I hope, is that it is psycho-emotionally and spiritually necessary for human beings to beautify their world, to organize it through story, through explore it through story, and through shared common experience. And that if you took away all the art in the world, took away all the music you listen to, you took away the paintings on your walls, you took away, right, it would be a grim, that would be a grim, sort of apocalyptic, weird, totalitarian world to live in a world without art. So for the full functioning of the human species, we need art. But that doesn't mean that art can solve all the political problems. So I think sometimes as artists, we're like, well, I'm going to solve the political problems through my art. You could also say, I'm going to make art and I'm going to be a political activist. There's time in the day to do both.
Yeah.
So
we would get gently in trouble at the farm I worked at if you use the wrong tool for a job. And the reason you get gently in trouble is because you're going to get in a lot of trouble if you break your hand using the wrong tool for the job.
Right.
So you're extremely eloquent on these topics, by the way.
About them a lot. Can I tell you one experience I had directing a play that is about this?
Please.
Again, I don't know if I'm usurping the podcast. I don't want to talk too much.
Usurp away with your totalitarian art.
I directed a play when I was teaching at Northwestern. It's a really wonderful play by Josh Sobel. He's an Israeli playwright called Ghetto. And it's based on the Vilna ghetto in World War II, Jewish ghetto. And there was a professional theater in the ghetto, for real. And the play was partially based on the diary of the ghetto librarian who kept copious notes on everything. But it's a very magical realism. It's not realistic. But at the time, in reality, in the ghetto, some people objected to the presence of theater happening in the ghetto. And they objected for two reasons. One, there'd be literally like a massacre, like 500 people shot in the square. And then that night, we're doing a musical review. Like, imagine if in Ann Arbor, there was a massacre. We cancel all the performances. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they were like, it's disrespectful to the people who are suffering and dead to perform. And people said, we're normalizing life in the ghetto. And that is dissuading physical resistance. And we must physically resist. We cannot normalize life here. Now, meanwhile, some people who knew they were going to be shipped out, and there was rumors where they were going, right? The next day, they had tickets, they still came. They wore their finest clothing, and they came to the fucking theater.
Yeah.
So the play explores the paradox and the limitations of the purpose of art.
Yeah.
That's why I was interested in it, because everyone's like, we're going to be social activists in our art. And I'm like, when is art not sufficient? Or when is art maybe a mistake? So it really explored its limitations. It was a real question whether art was the appropriate thing to be doing at that moment when there was an emergency. What are the limits? What can it not do? What is its proper place? And in fact, the play explored the paradox, because in one sense, people who were starving for anything spiritually were getting it from the theater. On the other hand, it may in fact have dissuaded physical resistance. So it may in fact added to the existential inevitability of what these people were facing.
Yeah, so I am in a study group through Occult of Personality on a book, Meditations on the Tarot. And I've been studying through that group, and I ended up reading about the origins of Pesach. Oh, sorry, not Pesach. The origins of Hanukkah and the origins of Purim.
Oh.
And so when the Jewish people were threatened with devastation politically, they prayed. And when the Jewish people were threatened with their temple taken away, they went to war. So I was wondering what I thought about this without either justifying war or thinking that there's no room for self-protection. I wanted to look at the actual spiritual element of this. And in our group, we say work and prayer, ora et labora. So to me, that means you tighten the other side. Like, to me, that means when you're in a spiritual crisis, are you looking at whether or not you're spiritually bypassing and not looking at your physical circumstances? When you're in a physical crisis, are you still keeping in touch with your spirituality?
Right.
And there's another interesting dialogue to me. Hey, you have a dialogue too, which is you have the fascination you have with our company, and you have stuff to do. So,
who, me?
Yeah.
No, to me. Hey, yeah. Well, I have a couple more minutes, but I did want to say that the play you guys, one of you wrote and the other punched up. I don't know who did what because I'm so confused at this point. But was a really fun experience for me, and it was an important one because it was basically the first project I did after the layover in the pandemic. So it was the thing that sort of brought me back into like doing shit and meeting people.
Cryogenic? Did you feel like cryogenically frozen and it was a slow thawing?
Yes. I mean, in some ways, the weird thing about the pandemic and not doing anything, no project at all for a couple of years is like, will I ever do anything again?
Yeah.
And then something comes along and then you just do it because then it begets something else, which begets something else. And suddenly you're active again. You know what I mean? So anyhow, I woke back up to being in the world with Tyrannosaurus. And I think it's such a funny play. I hope they do it at Center. That'd be great.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was I got a lot out of working with all you because as a writer, I tend to hide in my room and work. And so to actually be with a group of actors and directors and interesting thinkers and talking about these things is really helpful. And also because we're talking about these spiritual concepts in the piece too, that's another thing where the time alone can be really rewarding. But someone explained to me that it's good to have spiritual community because it's good to someone should know when you've been in your room drawing spirals on the walls for a week. You know, there should be someone who's tapping you on the shoulder. And so it's good to bandy and just take all these esoteric concepts and put them in a bedroom farce and see if they hold water.
Right. Well, I think it's in that sense, it's a really original piece. Because in many ways, it's a classic structure of a farce and some of the kind of tropes of a farce, but with this thread of spirituality and a kind of deeper level. Like there aren't a lot of plays like that.
Interesting. Yeah, it definitely goes through the list of farcical elements.
And I love that stuff.
Yeah.
It's so fun performing in a farce. It's like, it's so fun. And that's another purpose of art. We don't have to be so self-important. It's great to be entertained. It's great. We need to be entertained. What's wrong with that? Nothing. I did the play Boeing Boeing in Chicago, and I remember it's such a superficial, really well-structured farce, but like totally superficial. And like, leaving the theater after the show and people have been like, it's the most fun I've had in months. Like, that's great. I'm glad I help people have the most fun they've had in months.
Yeah, that's something that that I think artists can be spoiled by, because we get to spend all our life doing art and being surrounded by it. Then we think it's unimportant and we don't really, it's this line from Harriet the Spy where Harriet says, I hate money, and Sport says you'd like it a lot more if you didn't have any.
Oh my God. Wait, I'm sorry. Can I read you a quote and that'll bring it out? Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. Hold on. You're gonna love this.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Daniel Cantor,
Head of theater and dance, maybe not dance, at the University of Michigan.
Okay.
Broadway.
I'm reading this book.
And he's back.
It's Rick Rubin's book. The producer.
I got a copy here somewhere.
The Creative Act, A Way of Being. Let's see if I can find it. Hold on. Okay. So he quotes Oscar Wilde. This is another dialectic. Here we go. Oscar Wilde said that some things are too important to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And then he adds, art is one of those things. That's a good. There we go. Some things are
Okay.
too important to be taken seriously.
I got nothing after
That's
that.
beautiful. The sacred, divine comedy.
Exactly.
Well, Daniel Cantor, you're amazing. It's so good to see your beautiful face.
So good to see you guys. I'll see you soon in Michigan.
It'll be great.
Yes.
I want to see a version of this play where you play all the parts, Bugs Bunny style.
I'm happy to do it. If you
Okay.
All
Hey,
right.
what's the next class you're teaching?
Yeah, what's the move?
Well, in the fall I teach acting 3, which is basically the core of it is Greek drama, and then also acting 5. The core is Chekhov, early modernism.
Fantastic.
I know it'll be fun.
Hopefully one of us will be recruited to
Well, I know. Well, we'll talk later about that.
okay, sounds good.
Too important to be taken seriously. Bye.
Bye.
You're awesome.
See ya.